No more bullshit. No more bullshit.
Investigators in New York City are searching for clues after United Healthcare's CEO was shot and killed in what police are calling a targeted attack.
Surveillance cameras captured the attack on Brian Thompson as he was on his way to an investor meeting. There are reports the bullet casings left behind had writing on them, including the words deny, defend, and depose. Fox's Meredith Gorman has the latest on the search for the killer.
Fox have obtained this surveillance camera footage from the Hilton Hotel in Midtown showing the masked gunman following and then gunning down 50-year-old Brian Thompson as he is just steps away from the entrance to the hotel. Due to the graphic nature of the incident, we are freezing the video before Thompson falls to the ground. Now, law enforcement says a silencer appears to have been used on the gun as the gunman calmly shot the CEO.
It appears the suspect was lying in wait for several minutes. And as the victim was walking to the conference hotel, the suspect approached from behind and fired several rounds, striking the victim at least once in the back and at least once in the right calf. Many people passed the suspect, but he appeared to wait for his intended target.
New updated photos of the suspect in a Starbucks shortly before the shooting have been released by Crime Stoppers, as you can see here. He is masked and dressed in all black, wearing a tan or neutral-colored backpack. The suspect fired his gun, then fled through the Ziegfeld alleyway across the street, where authorities are investigating a cell phone that they found on the ground before he hopped on an electric bike and headed down 6th Avenue into Central Park.
All right, Fox News Alert now. Please take a look at this. Now following up a number of new leads in the murder of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson, including fingerprints on what seems to be a burner phone, DNA on a water, and according to our sources, police are looking into that gun, which they're saying is very distinct. And a brand new photo, look at this, showing the suspect, the killer, unmasked. You see the mask right under his chin? Where they believed he checked in with a fake ID.
And to these surveillance photos, you know, all of this is happening in one of the most surveilled cities in the country, if not the most surveilled. Do you think he's more skilled than we think?
Well, it's interesting you say that. I've been talking to my associates on this. Well, he's not average citizen, but he's not master assassin either. There were so many mistakes. And this whole thing, it almost reads like out of a comic book or something we'd see on Netflix, leaving the bullets, leaving clues. You know, either the person is maniacally intelligent or just a fool.
How do you read into it that he shot him in the back and the leg? You know, he didn't shoot him in the head before he ran off. Do you read into that any sort of way, Bill?
Yes, because the way I'm trained, it's called a Mozambique, 2 to the body, 1 to the head. That way you eliminate any chance of them surviving. We don't know that he specifically aimed for the leg. It just may have struck him in the leg. But what was interesting, that he knew he had to take 3 shots to get the casing out. So this was well thought out. You know, now the question is, when we'll find out after he's caught, was he hired? Or is this a self-radicalized individual?
Overnight, police releasing 2 new images of the person of interest in the killing of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson. The person seen inside what appears to be a taxi cab, and in another photo walking next to a vehicle. It comes after police recovered this backpack in Central Park, believed to be linked to the person of interest seen in surveillance video. 2 senior law enforcement officials say no gun was found. What was found, a jacket and Monopoly money. The NYPD says nothing in their investigation so far suggests the killing was related to Thompson's personal life.
The net is tightening, and we're going to bring this person to justice.
New York City Mayor Eric Adams says details like whether or not police have an ID on the shooter are being closely held.
We don't want to release that now. If you do, you're basically giving a tip to the person we're seeking, and we do not want to give him an upper hand at all.
But there are new details about the suspect. New York City's chief of detectives providing a timeline based on video footage to reporters. The shooter arrived in New York on Sunday, November 24th, and was caught on camera at the Port Authority bus terminal near Times Square. The bus he took originated in Atlanta, though it's not clear when the shooter got on, given that there were several stops on the way to New York. The shooter then took a taxi to the area where the shooting occurred. It was there for about a half hour before heading to a hostel on the Upper West Side, where he possibly provided a fake ID to check in. He checked out of the hostel on Friday, November 29th, but checked back in the next day. While at the hostel, the suspect had two roommates who say he kept his mask on even when eating, lowering it only when taking a bite of food. And according to a senior law enforcement official, in this one moment upon his initial arrival when flirting with a woman who worked at the front desk. The shooter left the hostel at 5:30 a.m. the morning of the shooting. After the shooting, traveling by bike up to Central Park, then by taxi further uptown to a bus terminal where police believe he boarded a bus out of New York City. And from there, the trail goes cold. Police are now investigating if the weapon may be a veterinary gun used to put down animals.
This is a very rare weapon. In essence, this is a needle in a haystack, but we have a lot of needles in this one haystack, which works in our favor in law enforcement to apprehend this violent assailant that's on the streets.
This is an ABC News special report.
Hi, I'm Diane Macedo. We are coming on the air because multiple law enforcement officials say a person of interest is now being questioned in the New York City murder of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson. They say he's identified as 26-year-old Luigi Mangioni. Here's New York City Mayor Eric Adams with an update.
Thompson of United Healthcare was the victim of a senseless act of violence. Our officers have been working around the clock. Many of them did not go home to pursue this individual. It was crucial that we were able to remove him off the streets of America, and we were going to seek him out no matter where he was at the time. And so this is a strong person of interest. The police commissioner and chief of detectives will go over where we are right now in the investigation. He matches the description of the identification we've been looking for. He's also in possession of several items that we believe will connect him to this incident. How did we do it? Good old-fashioned police work. The chief of detectives and the police commissioner made the decision to release as much of a photo that we had at the time. We sent it across the country, and someone, a McDonald's employee, did something we ask every American to do. If you see something, say something, but most importantly, do something. And they did. And because of that, we believe we have a strong person of interest to deal with this case.
What do we know about this individual? Mr. Mangioni is an engineer. He grew up in Towson, Maryland. He's 26 years old. He graduated UPenn in 2020 and then went on to a master's program where he got that master's degree in engineering. And he has addresses, as Shimon said, in Towson, where he grew up, in Philadelphia, where he went to school, in Honolulu, which we're still looking into. But he is strongly believed to be the suspect in this case.
We are now learning that Daniel Penny has been acquitted in his New York City trial here. So this is news that is just breaking right now. We learned, of course, that the jury was coming back, the Manhattan jurors weighing the fate of Marine veteran Daniel Penny, returning to court today, but only they were considering the lesser charge against him after a judge controversially tossed the more serious charge and avoided a mistrial. Remember, all of that really happening on Friday. There was a lot of back and forth, and then the jury just could not come to a decision on that first charge, the big charge against Daniel Penny. And so the court then brought that charge down. So the jury did not have to weigh that option anymore. But now they came back today in the jury acquitting Daniel Penny in this case. The jury previously had been instructed to deliberate the lesser charge of criminally negligent homicide only if they found Penny not guilty of manslaughter for some reason other than a lack of justification. Manslaughter is the second degree is dismissed. The judge told the jurors before sending them home on Friday. What that means is you are now free to consider count 2. Whether that makes any difference, I have no idea, she said there on Friday.
Meta's president of global affairs said earlier this week that the company's CEO, Mark Zuckerberg, is seeking, quote unquote, an active role in shaping technology policy with the incoming Trump administration. This after Zuckerberg reportedly met with Trump for the Thanksgiving Eve dinner at Mar-a-Lago. Jason, look, a lot of people are still mad at this guy because he censored so much information over COVID, working with 1,000 people in government, according to the Twitter files, working with them to censor information that the American people wanted to talk about and learn about during COVID. And now, is he going to get an active role in developing tech policy with President Trump?
So two things can be true at the same time here. We know from President Trump and the way he governed in his first term, that he likes to build a broad coalition, bring people together, even if they've been against him in the past. He never forgets. And I would just remind people of that. We talk about the censorship that we've seen in the past. Obviously, we had the drop boxes in 2020 and all of that nonsense. So President Trump will build those coalitions, but I would just caution people that President Trump has a long memory.
Okay.
You see more and more people who were not on the Trump train the first time around, didn't want to accept it, perhaps jealous of it. The guy who owns the Washington Post was one of them, a big critic of Trump, making sarcastic comments about Trump for the first 4 years. Trump took aim at Jeff Bezos, too, and his own Washington Post. You got the sense things would be different, in my view, when Jeff Bezos told people at Washington Post, we're not going to endorse a candidate leading up to the election. He had a bunch of people quit because of that. Can you believe a guy losing $70 million a year to keep them employed would get the people who get so upset they would quit on him? But he didn't. So you hear Jamie Dimon's been talking to the president, J.P. Morgan, for weeks. He used to be somewhat of a critic. And then you see Elon Musk, who had walked off the president's business council after what he thought was a controversy in Charlottesville. Right. He is now firmly on board, and those two are bros, it seems. Now he's working for him. The latest one to come aboard is Jeff Bezos of Amazon, saying nice things yesterday.
I'll start the ass kissing with you.
Yeah, he said he was optimistic about working with a calmer Trump, and he can help him reduce regulation. Listen to what else he said.
If we're talking about Trump, I think it's very interesting. I'm actually very optimistic this time around that we're going to see. I'm very hopeful about this. He seems to have a lot of energy around reducing regulation. And my point of view, if I can help him do that, I'm going to help him. Because we do have too much regulation in this country. This country is so set up to grow.
Joining us now, Rumble CEO and founder Chris Pavlovski. Chris, what do you make of the about face from big tech in Silicon Valley?
Yeah, so I think, they kind of move whatever way the wind blows. When it comes to actually holding values, and especially around the First Amendment, there are none. If we can all remember 4 years ago, it was the Hunter Biden laptop story where all these platforms started censoring factual information and, in my opinion, really helped sway the election in a major way. And I feel that there has to be consequences for things like that. We can't let that escape. They did real damage with the censorship they've done in the last 4 years. And that's something that Rumble has been fighting since 2020. And we've been fighting fiercely. We were the first platform out there to platform President Trump in 2021. And, it wasn't until about 2022 where Elon Musk entered the market with X and also helped on the free speech front. So it's really important that there's consequences for this mass censorship that's happened over the last 4 years around COVID, around the elections. And if there's no consequences, then companies like Meta and Google will continue to abuse their powers and continue to sway elections in ways that shouldn't be happening. So I'm very for some type of consequence in this scenario, and it's ultimately up and it's in the Trump administration's hands and to see what they'll do. But I think it's really important that for what they've done in the past, there are consequences.
One major tool for Musk and Ramaswamy's government efficiency agency could be artificial intelligence, and Palantir is already in the game. Anthropic and Palantir announced last month that they're partnering with Amazon Web Services to make Anthropic's Claude models available to U.S. intelligence and defense agencies. The agencies aim to use the large language model to process vast amounts of complex data rapidly and streamline clerical tasks for the government agencies. And when you say streamline, doesn't that mean saving money? Joining me now on a Fox Business exclusive is the man leading it all, Palantir CEO Alex Karp. You just talked about making commercial operations more efficient, government operations more efficient. Have you talked to Elon Musk or Vivek about Palantir?
Without going into all, Palantir, we want to support the U.S. government. We want to support them. I completely support the mission. And and again, there's two parts of the mission: getting out waste, figuring out what works, investing in what works. But there's also, we have a dearth of legitimacy in this culture. Almost all our institutions that are in charge of measuring, fixing, doing things have low legitimacy. Whether they deserve it or not, no one believes when the ICC says something. We believe they're anti-Semitic. We believe that the doctor is politicized. We believe our universities aren't teaching anything valuable. We don't trust. And neither side trusts. And the idea that like blue is right or whatever, no one believes it anymore. So we need transparency as the first step to reinvigorating legitimacy in this culture. And I wholeheartedly support what they're doing. And God knows, you could not have a better person than Elon doing it.
What if they come to you and they say, all those programs that you're doing for the Defense Department, we're cutting back the Defense Department?
Okay. I have enormous faith in both of them to figure out what's working. And Palantir exists to serve this nation. And I mean, we need to know what's working and what's not. And I think that's great for the nation and probably pretty good for Palantir too.
Congress's Select Subcommittee on the Coronavirus Pandemic is out with its final report. The 557-page document titled After Action Review of the COVID-19 Pandemic, the Lessons Learned and a Path Forward has determined that a lab-related incident involving dangerous gain-of-function research in China is the most likely origin of the COVID-19 pandemic. Per the subcommittee, the 5 strongest arguments in favor of the lab leak theory include: 1, the virus possesses a biological characteristic that is not likely to be found in nature. 2, data shows that all COVID-19 cases stemming from a single introduction into humans. This runs contrary to previous pandemics where there were, in fact, multiple spillover events. 3rd, Wuhan is home to China's foremost SARS research lab, which has a history of conducting gain-of-function research at inadequate biosafety levels. 4, Wuhan Institute of Virology researchers were sick with a COVID-like virus in the fall of 2019, months before COVID-19 was discovered at the wet market. And 5, by nearly all measures of science, if there was evidence of a natural origin, it would have already surfaced.
The findings state that EcoHealth Alliance nonprofit used American taxpayer dollars to facilitate gain-of-function research in Wuhan, China, and the Proximal Origin publication, which was used to discredit the lab leak theory, was prompted by Dr. Anthony Fauci to push the preferred narrative that COVID-19 originated in nature.
A CBS News investigation found dozens of law enforcement leaders buying and illegally selling guns. A review of government audits and court records over the last 20 years uncovered instances in 23 states across the U.S., plus Puerto Rico and Washington, D.C., for a total of more than 50 cases. And people who were supposed to protect and serve were selling these high-powered guns and making a steep profit. Erin Couchy, who led this reporting, is here with me in Studio 57. She's a producer for a CBS News Crime and Public Safety Unit. Erin, this is so mind-boggling that these high-ranking officers are getting these guns and then they're selling them to criminals. In essence, the law enforcement officers are criminals themselves.
Follow the money. What do you mean? Where? Oh, I can't tell you that. Just follow the money.
Senator
Senator Bernie Sanders criticized U.S. defense spending on Sunday, endorsing comments from tech billionaire Elon Musk, who has been tapped by Trump to find ways to slash government spending. Sanders is specifically speaking out against the amount of spending on the U.S. military, calling for reforms in the Pentagon's budget. Sanders said on X, Elon Musk is right. The Pentagon, with a budget of $886 billion, just failed its seventh audit in a row. It's lost track of billions. Last year, only 13 senators voted against the military-industrial complex and a defense budget full of waste and fraud. That must change. Musk, alongside entrepreneur Vivek Ramaswamy, have been appointed to lead a new Department of Government Efficiency initiative, which aims to reduce wasteful spending and streamline federal agencies.
You recently tweeted about Elon Musk in support of him suggesting that we should curb defense spending. What's the play here? This is someone who you've criticized previously. Do you see a potential partner in him?
In some areas, yes. In many areas, no. I mean, I think many of the things he did during this campaign were really ugly. On the other hand, he's a very smart guy. If somebody on the other side has a good idea, sure, we'll work with him. And if he goes out and says that the Pentagon has not been able to go through an independent audit, which is true for the last 7 years, that there's enormous waste in the Pentagon, he's absolutely right. Of course there is. I brought forth amendments over the years to cut Pentagon spending by 10%, which would still leave us, by far, with the strongest military in the world. So we need a strong military, but we don't need all the kind of the waste and the profiteering and the fraud that exists in the Pentagon right now.
That's right, feel the burn.
If somebody on the other side has a good idea, sure, we'll work with them. Donald Trump came out with an idea during this campaign. He said, you know what? Credit card interest rates, which in some cases right now are 20, 25%, should not be higher than 10%. Well, you know what? I agree with that. So we're going to introduce legislation to do that. We'll see if Mr. Trump is prepared to keep his word. And we're looking forward, and we will work with some Republicans on that issue. So where, Trump and Republicans make sense, happy to work with them. And we will be in vigorous opposition to many of their policies, which to me are extremely distasteful.
You might recall there was this lawsuit that was filed against Sean Combs back in October, where an unnamed Jane Doe alleges that back on September 7th, 2000, when she was just 13 years old, she was taken to a Video Music Awards, VMA's after party, which was 20 minutes away from the event in New York. And at this party, she claims that she took a drink, she started feeling woozy, lightheaded, she makes the claim that she may have been drugged, and then she tries to find a place to lie down in what she thought was an empty bedroom. She said that is when Sean Combs, along with a male and female celebrity, entered the room. And Combs allegedly grabbed her and said, "You are ready to party." Well, now, celebrity A, who was that unnamed celebrity, has been identified.
I want to know who's asked a kid.
As Sean Carter. This is a part of a newly filed amended complaint.
He's one of hip-hop's most celebrated artists, a successful businessman known for launching careers, and he's married to one of music's biggest stars. But on Sunday night, Sean Carter, who goes by Jay-Z, said being named in a civil lawsuit alleging rape is blackmail. CBS News legal contributor Jessica Levinson.
The details of these allegations are really troubling. The plaintiff here alleges that Sean Combs and Jay-Z drugged her and then raped her. It's hard to get more serious than this.
In a statement, Carter responded to the allegations and lashed out at Doe's attorney, Tony Busby, calling him a fraud and stating, "I will not give you one red penny, and these allegations are so heinous in nature that I implore you to file a criminal complaint, not a civil one. Whomever would commit such a crime against a minor should be locked away. Would you not agree?"
Something that's
Going around right now, a lot of this conversation about President Biden getting criticized from both sides of the aisle for pardoning his son Hunter after repeatedly saying he would never do it. And a lot of people are saying that it's hypocritical, et cetera, as if the other side doesn't do it. But what's your reaction to it?
I mean, I think all of the criticism is valid because, Democrats stand on this moral high ground all the time. And, they act so self-righteous.
Hallelujah. Amen. God bless. Amen. Hallelujah.
The reality is he didn't have to say anything in regards to, whether or not, his son wanted to be pardoned. He could have said, hey, man, I'm not focused on that right now. But since they were calling Trump a threat to democracy, and they were saying that, nobody's above the law, but they were speaking about him. That's what they were running on. So when he kept saying things like, nobody's above the law, I respect, the jury's decision in regards to my son, he didn't believe that. But he didn't have to volunteer that lie to begin with.
I'm going to stop you for a second.
Uh-oh.
Bullshit detected. Take precaution.
Only because you don't know that it was a lie. We don't know why he changed his
mind. You really think he just changed his mind over Thanksgiving weekend all of a sudden?
No, I'm going to tell you what I think.
Okay. Yeah.
I think he changed his mind because he got sick of watching everybody else get over. And this is just my feeling, because at some point you get to the place where you just go, so I'm just going to follow the straight and narrow always, because that's what's expected of Democrats.
But that's their fault. They're the ones that go out. They're the ones that go out there and they stand on this moral high ground. Listen, they don't have to do that.
I'm a Democrat. Tell me what the moral high ground is.
The moral high ground is nobody's above the law. I respect what the jurors are saying. He don't have to do that.
So we're mad at him because he changed his.
Oh no. By the way, I'm not mad at him pardoning Hunter Biden.
But you sound like you're
mad.
No. If I can get in on this, I actually think it went further, and this is one thing we really disagree on. Joe Biden made a point of saying we stand by our institutions and the impartiality of the Department of Justice.
Yes.
Democrats ran on that. The same DOJ indicted Hunter Biden. We shouldn't be saying it's corrupt like Donald Trump does. But then in his statement pardoning Hunter Biden, he says that it was a political pursuit by his own Department of Justice.
Can you explain to me why it is that when Joe Biden does something, everybody clutches their pearls? He's wrong.
Nobody
he lied.
has criticized Donald Trump more than me or Charlamagne God.
I'm sorry. Yeah, people have criticized him more. I've criticized him more. We've all criticized him more. But you're missing my question. Okay. My question is, what is it that makes people flip out with Joe, but we don't have the same kind of thing?
Well, I don't think people are flipping out with Joe. I think Democrats are flipping out with Joe because Democrats believe that they don't represent what he's currently representing. But that's just not true. That's why I say they stand on this moral high ground that simply does not exist. And I think this is also the problem when we pick sides, right? We've turned political parties into teams. I'm a Dallas Cowboy fan. Ain't nobody more delusional than me, right? Okay? I feel like we're going to the Super Bowl every year, but I'm not delusional. Well, no, that is delusional. But when it comes... But when it comes to political parties, if you pick a side, right, if you say you're a Democrat, if you say you're a Republican, you refuse to be objective about anything.
That's why I'm an independent.
Yes, but
I think that's the best way to go.
But that's not a monolith. We're not, Democrats are not a monolith.
But why can't you say when Democrats are wrong?
What a bunch of dumbasses.
Yeah, really. You've never heard that California is overtaxed and overregulated? That we are a one-party state where there's sort of no checks on that sort of extreme leftism. And that, what do you think?
I don't for a minute consider California a state that is extreme leftist. Not at all, not any way.
Well, that shows where your politics are. That's not where mine are.
Since total victory is impossible and the country politically split down the middle, the result is a doom loop of government gridlock, even greater polarization. When I mentioned to a few friends that our foundation would be hosting a forum on democracy and pluralism, I got more than a few groans and eye rolls, especially since, as far as they were concerned, the election proved that democracy is pretty far down on people's priority list.
Is that it?
No, there's more.
So the Democrats on the House Ways and Means Committee are now getting a lot of backlash because their X account tweeted something today that has led to, well, a lot of unhappy people, including Democratic voters. Now, what they did is essentially repost a story that was written by USA Today about how shoppers had spent a record $10.8 billion online during Black Friday. So here's a look at the post in question, which has since been deleted, by the way. And the Ways and Means Democrats, or at least their account, basically commented by saying, and here we were thinking y'all couldn't afford eggs. Essentially mocking or shaming holiday shoppers while downplaying or minimizing, the severity of inflation, especially the inflationary period that we experienced in 2022, which absolutely crushed American households.
Just a sneering condescension towards a lot of the voters. They were like, well, the economy's actually fine. These people are dumb. It's a messaging problem. But the messaging comes from the cash register and it comes from your bank account. It doesn't come from TV talking heads. They didn't have a messaging problem with the economy. They had an economy problem with the economy. This spending is largely being done on credit cards. People are in massive credit card debt, and they haven't given up on living. It's just costing more to do it, which is another reason spending is up, because everything you buy costs more.
Boston City Councilor TONYA Fernandez Anderson refusing to answer questions about the federal charges against her. Prosecutors say she organized a corruption scheme in order to steal $7,000.
Public officials who line their pockets with taxpayer money erode the trust and confidence of the public in the officials who serve them.
The U.S. Attorney says the illegal behavior happened in City Hall in 2023, where Anderson allegedly hired a relative to work for her and gave that relative a $13,000 bonus. Then inside a City Hall bathroom, they alleged these texts were sent. Bathroom and ready. Then that staffer allegedly gave Anderson back $7,000 cash of the taxpayer money.
You had one job.
Now some are calling for her resignation. In a statement, Mayor Wu said the serious nature of these charges undermine the public trust and will prevent her from effectively serving the city. I urge the councilor to resign. So does Councilor Ed Flynn.
I believe in the best interest of the city, it's necessary for Councilor Fernandez Anderson to resign.
And Anderson was released after that first hearing, meaning she is a free woman right now. And because these are just allegations, she is still a practicing Boston City Councilor in good standing and could report to work on Monday.
Mysterious drone sightings now in 12 New Jersey counties, and it's still unclear where they're coming from. Meanwhile, Governor Phil Murphy responds for the first time in a X post saying, quote, there is no known threat to the public at this time. Do other state Jersey officials agree? Well, here with reaction is New Jersey gubernatorial candidate and 101.5 talk radio host Bill Spadea. Bill, it's so great to have you on this morning. So no one has a better pulse on New Jersey than you and, talk radio. So what are your listeners saying to you, and what do you think about this?
Thanks, Rachel. We've got the largest audience in the state. And I have to say that I've got to give credit to my friend Mark Taylor, who is the mayor of Florham Park in Morris County, because back on the 16th, 17th, 18th of November, a few weeks ago, he called the show and he said, Bill, there are drones over my house. And last night there was a Black Hawk helicopter that was sitting in front of them. He said, I have no idea what's going on, but I've called the FAA. I'm calling the state police. And here we are weeks later. And it's increasing. They're everywhere. And, according to reports, I literally have done my entire show in the last week and a half has been on this drone issue because callers from all over the state are calling in to say some of these drones are the size of cars. And what it occurred to me that when the state police and the FBI are asking for our help, how do they not know what's happening? So a lot of people believe that state officials may, in fact, know a lot more than they're telling us.
Senator, President Biden's decision to pardon his son Hunter is facing bipartisan backlash. Even the Democrats are all over it. But what do you think? Is this much ado about nothing? It is his son, after all, and people do have sympathy for that. But a lot of people are angry with him about it. What do you say?
Oh, well, I think
it's undeniable that the case against Hunter Biden was really politically motivated, but I also think it's true that the trial in New York for Trump that was political as well too. Now it's that, and in both cases, I think a pardon is appropriate, and I really think collectively, America's confidence in these kinds of institutions have been damaged by these kinds of cases, and we cannot allow these kinds of institutions to be weaponized against our political opponents. And it's very clear both trials were politically motivated and weaponized that on the other side.
They'll say that about the J6 people too, though, right? That's what they're going to say on the other side. That is weaponized also.
I'm not referring to that. I'm talking about the New York trial. And now the Democrats on our side there were some that were gleeful, calling it like now he's a convicted felon and those things. And now for our party, we were talking about criminal justice, and we are now talking about second chances. And now all of a sudden now you're like, well, he's a convicted felon and all these things. And now clearly, again, both of those trials, the Hunter Biden one and the trial in New York for Trump, that was politically motivated. And those kinds of charges would have never been brought unless one side could realize that they could weaponize that.
The host of the Call Her Daddy podcast, Alex Cooper, has slammed the Harris campaign. In October, Alex Cooper interviewed the Vice President in an episode that went for around 40 minutes, which was mostly focused on abortion. The Harris campaign has been facing questions about its spending after it was revealed they blew more than $1 billion in 3 months and forked out 6 figures on building a set just to record that Call Her Daddy episode.
My studio that is gorgeous in Los Angeles doesn't even cost 6 figures. So I don't know how cardboard walls could cost 6 figures, but
do you think they did that? I mean, you saw it.
Absolutely not. With love to them. Oh my God, it was gorgeous, but it wasn't that nice. It wasn't like gorgeous marble.
Looking at the YouTube figures, Kamala Harris's appearance on the Call Her Daddy podcast failed to break 1 million, whereas Donald Trump's appearance on the Joe Rogan podcast reached more than 50 million. Joe Rogan says that he had been in negotiations with Harris's team for her to appear on his podcast, but the plans were scrapped when she refused to go to his studio in Austin.
Is there a Venn diagram for this?
And that's the game!
You've disconnected from the hive mind. Explain.